Don't let your research get shoved in a drawer. From Current Forward and Austin PBS, our presenters Lillian Brown, Ashley Lappin, and Carolyn Connolly. Welcome to the stage.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for hanging out at the blue stage with us. There's only a few of us, so please feel free to come closer if you so desire. Today we're going to be talking about ways to prevent your research from getting shoved in a drawer where no one pays attention to it. But before we get into that, I'd like to introduce ourselves. I'm Ashley Lappin. On your far left is my lovely business partner, Lillian Brown. Together we run Current Forward, which is a consumer research and insights company based right here in Austin, Texas. I'm also thrilled to introduce Carolyn Connolly, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Austin PBS, a former client and a dear friend. So I have a few questions for those of you that are here. I know we're in Austin, but there's a bunch of you in from out of town, so I'd love to see a show of hands. How many of you are familiar with the Austin City Limits Music Festival? All right, a good number. All right, just a show of hands again. How many of you are familiar with the Austin City Limits television show? All right. Now, how many of you know, show of hands, that the Austin City Limits television series, which is currently in its 50th anniversary, has always been and is still currently filmed and produced by Austin PBS? Right? Those numbers go down, which isn't too surprising to us. As part of the research work we did with Austin PBS, we were tasked with identifying a new and diverse audience and really understanding their familiarity and associations with the ecosystem of the Austin PBS ecosystem of brands. And Carolyn's going to tell you a little bit more about the genesis of that work.
Yeah, hi everybody, and thank you, Ashley, and thank you, audience, for participating. As Ashley mentioned, not surprising, that's part of the reason why I was brought in to Austin PBS as the first and ever Chief Marketing Officer just over a year ago, because we have somewhat of a problem with branding from specifically our longest running television series, Austin City Limits, which, as Ashley mentioned, we are celebrating our 50th anniversary. So part of that also is realizing that we have other challenges outside of that. As you probably are aware, PBS is an over-the-air television show. We have 4 channels specifically here at Austin PBS, and what we know from the new trend that's moving obviously very quickly in the last 10 years is moving into streaming. So that's also a challenge that we're facing. But also, if you look at our big, broader audience as we currently stands, given that PBS is a 60-year brand, is that the audience is 65 plus. So in order for us to continue our path forward and really bringing the content that we produce, such as Austin City Limits television series, we really need to figure out who that audience is that makes up our area. And part of that is the fact that we've grown as a station. After 60 years, we're not only representing Austin, we represent 22 counties around Central Texas. So if you can imagine, that's close to 4 million people, which is why I tapped my friends at Current Forward. Both Ashley and Lillian came in and really helped with some research to uncover who that next potential lifetime value donor could be that could grow with us over time.
And so today we're really here to tell you 5 things that we recommend all researchers do to ensure the insights really get incorporated into organizational initiatives. But we're going to tell you these tips in the context of the work that we did with Carolyn and Austin PBS. And how we got to these 5 things is really based on our collective experiences working across brand, creative, design, and research, both in-house at brands, at agencies, and of course at a firm of our own. We all have a strong held belief that researchers, in our modern business era, researchers cannot just be researchers. Researchers must be able to partner to help turn the corner to implementation. we have a unique point of view because all of us have been on the implementing side. So this is where kind of all of these 5 tips are coming from. So let's jump in. Our first tip is really understand how your organization or any organization judges information. Super critical before going into any given engagement or project. We're going to put up a few things that we think about when we go into any project. We cover all of these topics, but they're different for different organizations. So Carolyn, would love to kind of hear from your perspective in Austin PBS, which ones of these mattered when you're thinking about getting buy-in across your organization?
I think for me specifically, given that it's just been over a year now being in the organization, it was really critical to understand the humans in the room. So you're going to hear a lot of that from me. It's knowing your audience, whether it's the people that you're trying to sell in this information to, or the audience that you're trying to connect to from a marketing perspective. So I look at that first bullet, sample size needed for buy-in. That's pretty crucial. If you think about who are the ones that are going to agree with the data that you receive back from that sample, you've got to get them to feel comfortable with the size of it. Secondarily, I think stakeholder attention span is really understanding who you're telling the story to and how much information they may need or not need. Again, this is in the context of disseminating all this information that you're going to do, all the work you're going to do, and it's really on the client's, it's their duty, it's our duty as a client to help our researchers bring this information in and ensuring that we have the right amount of information and we're not overwhelming anyone. And I think lastly, it's identifying internal champions is, in my opinion, another really important piece of this. You know, you're going to shake it up a little bit in some people's biases and mindsets about what they think the brand is and how it's valued and what consumers think of it. Because, you know, we're in our own vacuums, we're in our own bubbles, and sometimes you just have to find those particular champions across either your leadership team or within your client groups itself, and really find somebody that's going to help you get the information moving forward internally and keeping everybody on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and again, I mentioned it's kind of different for every client. When we work together, just having that simple understanding that sample size was really what was going to help open the door for adoption and understanding, right? If we didn't lead with that in the first sentence of our conversation, people were going to kind of tune out. You know, but we're also currently working with the San Antonio Spurs, and we're thinking very much about the best method for sharing insights given the size of their organization, the location of the people within their organization. So all these things kind of shift and differ depending upon, you know, what organization you're working with.
So our next tip for ensuring your insights work resonate across an organization is to get your client or your internal stakeholders to share as much background information as possible. We never want to roll into a room promising new insights that aren't actually new. And so I'm pulling up an overwhelming list of documents that we share when we start engagements with new clients. We never expect them to be able to deliver every single thing on this list, but it does set a tone and understanding for the breadth and depth of the knowledge that we're hoping to gain before we really get moving. So Carolyn, can you share some examples of the most pertinent background information you gave to us when we got going?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, given the fact that the brand has existed for over 60 years, we had the company documentation, the mission, the vision, really the value statements of what we are as a brand. What we didn't have was an Austin PBS specific marketing and brand perspectives there, given the fact that I was brought in to build those foundations. So I had to kind of take it and turn it into the media and analytics side of it, given that we are content creators and we are a television station. So viewership, engagement through social, all of those metrics are extremely helpful. But I do know that we all here, everyone in this entire room, even outside of our panel here, is that we all struggle with disparate data. What data is really valuable? And in my opinion, from a brand and client perspective, all of it. So although we have PII data, our donor data, which is very important to us, we would never want to give any PII out. There are pieces of that we can extract that are extremely helpful. And I'll give an instance of what was helpful for us is zip code data. Zip code data alone was giving us a bigger, broader insight to who our current audience looked like because of where they lived. So if you think about, again, the Central Texas area, who are the people that are currently members of our station, it gave us a really clear view that they were an affluent, white, older audience. Just by the sheer fact that we can layer on demographic data from the city of Austin and the state of Texas to say, okay, we can make some really good assumptions off of who we know we have. And that did not, that wasn't giving anything away from a PII perspective, but it was tremendously helpful for Current Forward to do more work as we move forward. You'll start to see some of that and where that came out to be helpful for us.
Yeah,
Great. So our third tip is to really gather representatives from across the organization to have early input at the onset, right? And yes, we're talking about stakeholder interviews, but we're talking about more than that. Getting a member from each of the key teams into an upfront workshop where we can all have the same conversation together. So we go through an exercise with an entire group and we have everyone answer these 3 questions. We talk about commonalities, we talk about, outlying opinions, and we really have the conversation right there in the room. Getting the answers to these 3 questions helps us, yes, impact research design, but it also helps us to shorten timelines. It allows us to get from project kickoff to being in field faster. It allows us to reduce the rounds of feedback, right? So all these things can feel like extra steps at the onset when you're just trying to get going, but they make everything so much more efficient and effective. So Carolyn, would love to hear a little bit about who from Austin PBS you brought in and why it was so important.
Yeah, and I know you're going to probably hear this a lot from me. I really do believe that the more people that you're able to bring in the beginning of a project and get them on the same board to have the same, their skin in the game, feel like they're included, the easier it is along the way to get them to buy in to the results and get them to actually actualize and move it.
There's an issue with your mic.
Oh. Do I need to repeat what I just said?
He has no idea.
No,
No,
I'm saying
okay.
no.
Just keep going.
Just keep going.
Okay, great.
So ultimately, I definitely think bringing people in, we even brought in our board. We brought in anyone that we could just to get their input so everybody felt heard. It's very important.
Yeah, great. So we've talked about a few tips that were kind of for the upfront of a project as you're getting going, but these last 2 are for the end when you have insights in hand and you're sharing and socializing. And the first one here is really like make those insights impossibly easy, incredibly easy to get. The easier they are for people to access, the more likely they are to use them. And there's a lot of ways to do that. One of our favorites is to create an internal website that is sort of a living, breathing, single source of truth that everyone can tap into without, hesitation. But what works best is really dependent on the culture of the organization that you're in. And so with the work we did with Carolyn and the Austin PBS team, we did a lot of live presentations. We did a town hall, we did board presentations. Carolyn, can you share a little bit about why live presentations are so impactful for your teams?
Absolutely. Again, bringing everybody along, it's really important. You can have the greatest idea in the world and you leave somebody out and you don't get their point of view and you don't understand where they're coming from. It could even be a miss on our end. So the other point that I would like to make is the fact that bring your researchers into those meetings. I actually brought Current Forward into both our town hall and our board meeting. I'm the representation of this work internally, but they're the ones that are out in the field. And so a lot of great questions came out of that. And these were questions from people like cameramen, not something that you'd expect, right? But they all have so much history and have a lot of point of views about where we are, where we're going, and really great questions. And without having them be part of it, it's going to be really hard for them to understand what, it's the idea of why did we do this? What did we do? And then how do I actually use it? So, you don't want this to just be shoved in a drawer somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. That stakeholder or the town hall meeting had like 60 people. And so it was great to hear questions from all over the organization. We really believe that the research work isn't done when you hand over that final deliverable. It's done once everyone understands it, understands the implications of it, and the next steps that they need to take to really put it to use.
Yeah. And Ashley actually just kind of started to touch on our fifth and final tip, which is really to make research memorable, right? Like it has to be memorable in order for it to be actioned upon and implemented. I think our industry has been trying to make research memorable since its existence, right? Since the beginning. But it's 2024. We have more tools, we have more resources, we have more internal capabilities on our teams than ever before to make our research memorable, and it's really, really critical. Otherwise, what's the point of investing in it, right? We have done this in a few different ways. So we have done an audio visual tour of a consumer journey. We have built a box of artifacts where we really were enabling our clients to step into the shoes of their target audience by touching, feeling, smelling, seeing the things, the products and items and artifacts that their target audience experiences on a day-to-day basis. But there's also so many other simpler, efficient ways to do it, right? Through video. Video is so powerful in terms of making research insights memorable. And that might seem obvious, but I think sometimes it's like goes by the wayside. It's like, oh, we can't afford that. Well, actually, you can do it very efficiently, and it matters so much. So one thing that we did with Austin PBS was did man on the street videos, incorporated them into our final presentation, and I think they drove a lot of impact. But would love to hear from you what that led to.
Yeah, it was no surprise. We did the same similar exercise as we did starting off this panel today with you, and we knew the likelihood of most people understanding who PBS is, and you know us as a young child, but we lose you when you get in your teens, and how do we bring you back into the fold? And so our artifact here was great, because we looked at where did we want to get these intercepts done. We used that zip code data that we talked about earlier, and we realized what a land grab we had. It's basically the whole entire east side of the counties were up for grabs, just waiting for us to engage with them. And so that's exactly where we went, looking for these folks to see what they knew about us and how they perceived us. Are we going to play the video? No. Okay. No. More or less, people didn't, same as you, did not make all the connections from a brand perspective.
Yeah. So hopefully those 5 tips may help you make a bigger impact with your research and insights work at whatever organization you're at or working with. I think we might have time for a few questions. I'm going to leave it up on this slide in case we don't get a chance to connect. You can find us after. There's also a recap PDF that you can pull down off the QR code there. But yeah, happy to field any questions you might have.
We do have a question from the app. So here's one question. So it says, on point 4, what are some other examples of making it easy to get?
Sure. So, I think website definitely helps. Live presentations, yes. But whatever the format is that I would say the organization uses most often, so things like Figma boards, Miro boards, there tends to be a platform that somebody favors. Putting it in a plate like Google Docs are great. I think not only easy to get in terms of shared access, but also the ability to update it in real time. So you're not version searching deep in your email for that attachment. So anywhere that is, sort of power of the internet and the cloud, to put it at people's fingertips.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that point, consistency, right? It's like, yes, it matters where you put it and how you deliver it, but be consistent every single time. We always put things here. This is how you're going to get them. This is how you access them, right? I think repetition of communicating that within an organization is critical, because we all have short attention spans, right? We all forget where things are, but if the research team is drilling into everybody consistently where to find things, it becomes that much more easy to access.
All right. I think we're going to have to wrap it up at this point because we're at time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all. All right.
All right.